Misogyny. Some might say it's alive and well. I've always had my doubts, but there's been a recent study that looks at teenage boys in particular, and around 40% of Australian boys allegedly support violent extremist ideologies, with more than a third having misogynistic attitudes towards women. And this is boys between 13 and 17. And I just find this so disturbing that these are the attitudes that are being permeated. And there's things like Andrew Tate and the internet that are obviously be blamed for permeating these kinds of views. But I think these views are also learnt at home. And if you're not seeing respect at home and you're not having those healthy relationships with both male and female, whether they're parents or parental figures or guardian figures or just within your own everyday experience. And that's actually frightening to think that that number of kids may not be seeing healthy gender relationships being modelled in the home or in their broader community, as well as whether it's the school environment. But, I mean, obviously the internet is playing a big role. These Andrew Tate and these sort of incels, I mean, I don't understand the involuntary celibate. Well, I can tell you why you're celibate is because you're an idiot and you're rude and revolting and probably haven't showered very often and live in your mother's basement with a tinfoil hat. I can give you a few tips on how to improve with the women. But, you know, these are just, they're very strange subcultures. But if you look at this study as well, it actually looked to young girls, to what their attitudes towards women. And they weren't particularly healthy either. And it's really worrying to think that young girls have a negative image of women or themselves, and that will be something that will continue through adulthood, is really a really frightening state, because where are they getting fed this information if they're not getting it modelled in the home?
Well, I think a lot of it is definitely coming from social media, and you do kind of see the most toxic examples of things. That's the stuff that gets views, whether it's toxic masculinity or toxic femininity. And I think that is a big challenge. We've put so much emphasis on how bad men are. You're capable of violence. You're going to mistreat women. You're a danger to society. But we actually also have developed a toxic feminism as well, which says women are better than men. We don't need men. Men are good for nothing, useless slobs who are completely add nothing to society. If anything, they detract. And so I can understand why kids today are confused, conflicted, and falling into some of these destructive ideologies because, as you say, Hollie, what are the examples for them? Where are they learning what healthy masculinity and healthy femininity looks like?
Yeah, the issue of our boys and young men has been an increasing one now for a number of years. I think it was captured really well with that Netflix drama last year of adolescence. I really liked that. I encouraged parents to have a look at that, even if it is just skilling up in some of these language of incels and the language that they hear online. You need to know about it. But our boys are lost, and I agree, Freya, with you. I think that part of it is that when they're told so many times that they are the problem, that it is masculinity is toxic. And if you add to that, if you're a white male and all that comes with the guilt of being a white male and privilege, at some point they're going to say, well, fine, that's who I am. And they're going to lean into that culture. And of course, there are many platforms now just sitting there waiting in dark corners of the web to encourage that. So it is a big problem. I think that they're lost in their identity. They're lost in their role. You know, men these days, in terms of their masculinity in relation to women, have really lost what it means to be a good man. And, you know, even the idea that we have that word toxic before them. I mean, masculinity in itself is a positive thing. It shouldn't always been associated with a bad thing. And I agree, I think it has become like that. And I think women have to take responsibility for our role in that. So it is worrying as someone who's raising a young boy, and you're raising young men, Hollie. I do consider that and how we can portray those healthy relationships.
What about the young women? I'm just going to ask you to put your child psychology hat on here, that young girls have this distrust of women, have these feelings towards women. It just seems to me so dangerous that that girls are growing up not even trusting their own sex and their own identity.
I honestly think it's just a whole heap, as you said, of confusion. I think what the internet does is provide a whole information dump to everyone. And for every view that you'll get a counter view. You'll get radical views. In there, you might get a sensible view. But you're consuming all of it all day, and our brains weren't meant to do that. We've never consumed information. I call it like drinking from the fire hose. Every day we're consuming this, and our brains weren't meant to do that. So they're hearing all these messages and they're not just being allowed to grow up in a normal developmental way.